Hey guys, hopefully everyone is doing well. Today's target is to see 13.27. The chapter which we are related with is leverage and capital structure. And basically, some parts of this question has already been solved in previous part A, B, C like this. And we are going to solve remaining part of this question. Managerial Finance is our book and Lawrence Gitman writer 13.27. Your requirements were starting from A to I, and we have completed A where EBIT were calculated, then amount of debt were mentioned, annual interest was calculated, EPS was calculated, and we have also calculated average EPS or expected EPS. Standard deviations are also calculated. Up till here we have completed, and we are now going to see our third part, third part. Okay, let me show you what we have already done. We are starting from here. Three income statement for 0% debt and three EPS were calculated. And then three income statement for 15% of debt, three EPS were also calculated. And then 30% debt has started, and we have calculated three income statement with three different EPS were calculated. Fourth part was started for 45% of debt, three income statements, and three EPS were calculated. And then finally fifth part was started where three different income statement and three different EPS earning per share were calculated. We have started then E part where average EPS were calculated for all proportion. For 0% debt EPS was here, and then for 15% EPS was here, 30% EPS, 40% EPS was calculated, for 60% debt EPS was calculated. In the similar way, E second part was started, and standard deviation for 0 was calculated over here, and then standard deviation for 15%, standard deviation for 30%, standard deviation for 45%, and last standard deviation for 60% we have calculated. Right now this part was ended, but before starting our next part, it is better to arrange our data, to arrange our answers so that we can understand what we have done up till now. This is your working for E3 part. So over here we will be writing our probability given in our question, and we will write average EPS, we will write standard deviation, then we will calculate coefficient of variation. This is just for calculation of CV, we understand, but for that we will arrange this data accordingly. So here let's make these headings, and my button for wrapping text was not working. Okay, now it's working, and previously it was not working. So first 0% probability, then we have, okay, for that we'll have to go to the question again. Probabilities are ranging from 0%, and then we have 15, 30, 45, 60. All right, now I understand it's 15th table. So over here we are arranging these probabilities. Then we have 15%, 30%, 45%, and 60% probabilities are available. For each we have calculated EPS. For that, let's go back, and we are going to see E1 where average EPS we have calculated. For 0% EPS was 3.6, and let's start our journey for 15%, and here 15% debt ratio, and your EPS was calculated as 4.02. Next 30%, first we will go to E1 part, This is your E1 and 30% probability is here, our heading, and its EPS we have calculated is 4.5. Now we will go for 45%, and here you have seen 45% of probability, its EPS was 4.95, we have put over here. Now we will seek for 60%. This is debt ratio 16%. Average EPS was calculated 5.175. Now here I would like to share that whole of the question is properly arranged. That is why it is not difficult to seek or search our required element. Otherwise, if let's say it was not in presentable position, it would be very difficult for you to seek or search your required data in presence of this much length. Average EPS we have mentioned 3.6, 4.03, it may be called 4.02, and then we have 4.5, 4.95 and 5.175. These are average EPS. And now we will put standard deviation. Let's up. E2 part is starting from here, and we have calculated standard deviation for probability 0, which is 2.09. Standard deviation was calculated as 2.09. Okay, for next 15% probability we will search, and yes, this is your standard deviation for 15% probability, and 2.46 is your standard deviation for next 30% probability. This is this is uh, this is 30% probability, and we have our standard deviation 2.98. Actually I was scrolling up and 30% was disappearing. 45% is here, and you have calculated its standard deviation as 3.8. Finally, for 60%, this is your standard deviation for 60%. Look over here, standard deviation probability 60%, and we have 5.22. Alright guys, standard deviation has been completed. Why we have written everything over here? Because next parts would also be requiring this data, and we have arranged it. Now it would be very easy for us to pick data from here instead of scrolling up and down separately. Coefficient of variation, alright, it is also can be denoted as CV, and it is calculated by taking standard deviation, and it would be divided by average earning per share. So now you can see this is your standard deviation, and you need to divide it with average EPS, which was 3.6. So first calculation we have made, it is 0.581, and now second CV, for which standard deviation 2.4 would be divided by average EPS 4.0. We have got our second EPS 0.611, second CV, it's not EPS, second CV, and third CV we are going to calculate by taking standard deviation. It would be divided by average EPS. Third CV 0.66, and then we have fourth standard deviation. It would be divided by average EPS 4.95. So we have got 0.76. Finally, standard deviation was 5.22. It would be divided by EPS 5.175. So these are your answer of E3, where we have calculated our coefficient of variation. In this question, we were needed to calculate CV, and why we have written everything over here? Because how easy it had become to calculate your CV without going up and down. So in this way, this data has been completed, answers are completed, and now we will proceed for the next part of the question. E is 100% completed. Over here, what you have done, expected EPS, we have made the table. Average EPS and standard deviation, we have made the table, and coefficient of variation, this has also been completed. Now we are looking forward for F part, plot the expected EPS CV of EPS against the capital structure on separate sets of axes. Alright, what is requirement? We will be making EPS and capital structure, CV and capital structure graphs. To settle down graphs, we have already compiled our data, which would be very helpful for us. Look over here, this is our compiled data. What we need is to make our graph for probability and average EPS. This is probability or debt equity ratio. Better word is to write it as debt equity ratio, and when I have carefully examined, it was debt equity ratio, so we have changed its name, or debt ratio. It can be called debt equity ratio, or it may be called debt ratio. So now our requirement is saying to make a graph presenting debt or capital structure and average EPS. So here we need to make our graph, and how much lines we need on x-axis? 5. So I think in this way we can complete our graph taking these lines. Now we can start from here to make it equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, excessive one line we can take. Here we will draw our graph. X-axis has been drawn, and now we are drawing our y-axis. Okay, so axis has been drawn. We are going to put our debt ratio over here, and this is starting from 0%, and then we have to write 15%. Let's mark it to the right side, and here you will start with 15%, and then you need to put 30%. 0% would already be present over here. After 30% we have 45%, then we have 60%. In this way our graph would be completed. We don't need to put extra because maximum range is from 0 to 60% debt ratio. This was your debt ratio from 0 to 60%, and we have mentioned everything. 0 would be present over here. Alright guys, we now have to put EPS, which is starting from 3.6 to 5.175, continuously increasing. So 5 means we need 10 lines or 11 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we have excessive lines. Enough for our data. Here again we are making our alignment accurate according to requirement. So here you will put your first line with 0.5, then you can have 1, then you can have 1.5, after which we have 2, then we have 2.5, 3, then 3.5, 4, 4.5, 4.5, and then we have 5. Okay, and last one is 5.5, and as you can see that maximum amount is 5.175. So our data would easily be presented at our graph. Here we will choose a circular point to present the graph, and very small part we will choose to present it. Okay, first point, at 15%, at 0%, we have 3.6. This is your 0% line on x-axis, and you need to have 3.6. So 3.6 would be just like over here. So first point have been mentioned, 3.5. 3.5 is over here, and just above 3.5 we will get 3.6. This second point is for 15%, and your EPS is 4.0. 4.0 would be exactly upon this point. This point has been made, but we have to write as our EPS is over here. Like we have mentioned, debt ratio was present over here. EPS is on y-axis. We are now taking our third point, for which we will go to 30%. At 30%, 4.5. It is exactly at this stage. 4.5 has been mentioned, and finally, not finally, at 45%, second last, 4.95. 4.95 would be little up but under 5. This point has also been mentioned. Now for 60%, we need to put 5.175. 5.175 would be little up again. Alright guys, so we have got our points. Now we will join these points to make our curve, and for which we'll again pick a straight line. Multiple straight lines would be made as graph is not exactly parallel to each other. Let's see if it is. Alright, 3 points are matching, and even we can have our fourth point. That's fantastic. Within a single line we have completed our graph. So from graph it was very prominent that it is continuously been increasing, 3.6, 4.0, 4.5, 4.95, 5.175. That is why it was easily make. Graph has been completed, so it means half part of E is completed. Let's go back to the question, and we were asked to make the graph, EPS and coefficient of variation. EPS with capital structure has been made, and now we will be drawing CV with capital structure, and data of this particular element still present. We need to make graph for this CV and debt ratio, and obviously for this we are doing or planning to make this graph again. Both y-axis and x-axis would be drawn. Here is y-axis, and now we will see our x-axis. For x-axis, as usual, we will put debt ratio or debt equity ratio. It would be started in similar way. We have to align it on right side. This point is 0%, and then 15%, after which 30%, 45%, 60% is your debt ratio, and at this place there would be 0% at this place. Over here we will be presenting CV or coefficient of variation. Coefficient of variation, that means CV. So let's move to next. We need to make our headings or inputs so that it can be visible over here. CV, let's read out. Our CV is starting from 0.58, 0.6, 0.6, 0.6, and maximum it is going to 1. 0.58 is also required to be presented. We need to have 1. 0.1 to 10. Okay, it is possible, for which we need 10 lines. Let's count: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we have enough space. You can use 0.1. Let's align them to our right side so that it can be in presentable form. After 0.1 we will put 0.2, and then we have 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1.0, 1.1. How much maximum we were? Okay, 1.0. So it means our maximum limit has been achieved. Okay, from here let's start our points focusing upon coefficient of variation and debt ratio. For the time being we are hiring this point, and we are unable to, okay, it has been picked. Let's go down and we are putting it according to. So our requirement is what? For 0%, 0.58 is your CV. For 0%, that is here 0.58. This is your 0.5, and just above to the half would be your 0.58. First point we have seen. Let's see second point. For second point it is 15%, and for which 4.6 would be put. This is 15%, and 0.6 is present over here, just little above. Now let's see what exact point was. 0.61. I think it's enough. A bit up would be taken. So now it is okay. 0.61 has been mentioned. Let's see, next point is for 30%. Read out how much CV for 30%. This is your 30% and 0.66. Let's come over here. 0.66. Why it is different? We have to see it again, because these decimals are continuously increasing. 0.58 and 0.6 continuously increasing. 58 and 6. Okay, and this point would be 0.6. How much it was? 0.66, where it would be a little bit above than half. Okay, point has been mentioned, and now we will be looking for 0.45. Okay, what is for 45%? This is your 45%. 0.76. Let's come back. 0.7 is over here, and 0.76. Okay, exact right point. Last is for 60%, and here we are making its alignment. Let's see for 60% is what we need to make little adjustment. For 60% it is 1.01 CV, and that would be, this is 1, and 0.1 would be little up. So we have got our points for CV and EPS. CVs which were calculated 0.76 and 1.009 CV and debt ratio. Okay, now we are in need to join these points for CVs 0 and it is 0.58. Let's read your graph again. This was your debt ratio and it was 0%, 15 to 60%, and then it was related with coefficient of variation, and coefficient of variation was 0.58, 6, 0.6, 0.66, then 0.76 and 1.01, and this was your graph. Please read it again carefully. It is continuously increasing, and for last 60% gap was a little bigger gap. All right, so after reaching this point, now we need to join these points. Let's copy it and we will use it instead of taking it again. So we do have these points. First point we are joining would be here, and second point would be joined. No, just 2 points we can join over here, and next line would be joined with little different twist. Pick over here, and your, no, it can't be joined. Here we have our next line. Take it over here, and second point would be put over here. So in this way we have presented our coefficient of variation, and beside it we were having debt ratio. Two graphs are completed. Let's get back to the question and see what was said and what we have made. Plot the expected EPS against the capital structure, and then coefficient of variation as well. So two graphs are completed. Now let's go back to the G point, where what is said: using EBT, EBIT and EPS data developed in part D, plot 0, 30 and 60% capital structure. So obviously for that we need that data, and EBIT or EPS both are required. EBIT and EPS for 0, 30 and 60%. Let's arrange our data, and we need 3 different probabilities. Here our part has been ended. Let's mark it as it has been completed with this particular color. Okay, so we are now going to start our point G. Okay, here what we need again, probability, sorry, debt ratio is needed 0%, then 30%, and then 60% is needed. Why we have chosen this? Because in our question we were asked to take only 0, 30 and 60%. The next elements which are needed is EBIT at 0%, earning before interest at 0%. Let's get to the point. Over here debt ratio was 0 and their EBITs are present over here: 60,000, 240,000 and 420,000. Okay, let's see if we can remember 60, 240, 420. Hopefully we will remember it. Okay, so for 0% it was 60,000, then we were having 240, and finally we were having 420. Luckily we have written everything which was required. This is your EBIT. Okay, and the second one is your EPS, earning per share, at 0%. This was for your 0%, your EBIT, and now we will be looking for EPS at 0%. Go back to the first part of the question. Here it is 0%, and EPS were calculated over here. 0.9, 3.6 and 4.3. Instead of memorizing them, let's copy them, and we will remove their colors as well. We will temporarily be putting at here. Just write down it. First was 0.9, secondly 3.6, and then we have 6.3 as your EPS. Now these are not needed and we can remove them. I'm hopeful that they can easily remove this because this button does not work as well. Okay, so it is not working. We have completed our EBIT EPS for 0%. So let's transfer this data little down, and here debt ratio 0% you have put. Let's mention it 0%. Okay guys, we need to make this arrangement again for second ratio, which was mentioned in the question, is 30%, and their EBITs and EPS would be written over here. These are your headings, and this is now not needed. Let's remove it. So guys, we need to have our next debt ratio 30%. Let's get back to 30%. Yes, we have seen this is 30%. EBIT, which was calculated, is 60, 240 and 420. So we have our EBITs similar, 60, 240 and 420. So no need to copy as values were same. So this EBIT would be taken as it is over here. 30% EPS is needed. This is 45%, and yes, this is 30% we have reached, and we need EPS. EPS are present over here. For the time being, we are copying it instead of going up and down again and again, and let's paste them over here. Write down your EPS. First EPS was 0.64, second EPS is 4.5, third EPS is 8.35. In this way it has been completed. Okay. So we need a third part as well. Debt ratio 60% is mentioned. Copy and just paste over here. Again, ratio would be changed from 30% to 60%. Calculator dropped. EBIT would remain same, and this EPS would be changed. Let's go back to the debt ratio of 60%. Yes, this is 60%, and we have calculated EPS over here. minus. Okay, so get back to our question and let's put them over here. Okay guys, for 60% you are now going to put their EPS. This is for 0%, and now we will be looking for second 240,000 EPS is this, and third EPS 11.925. These are not required now. Let's try to remove this yellow color if it would. Normally it does not cooperate, and no, this is not working. Okay, leave it. Why we have taken these three elements over here? Go back to the question. In part G we were asked using EBIT and EPS, which we have drawn over there. Developed in part 2 for 0, 30 and 60%, we have already developed structure on the same set of EBIT and EPS axis. It means same. In previously it was said to make against the capital structure on separate set of axes. Please note it down. At F part separate axes were required. On G part we need to put all these graphs on same set of EBIT axes. So it means our graph would be mixture of three different statements. Three different statements are present over here, and we are going to start making their graphs. Look, first, second and third, all ratios would be made in similar graph. We need to put EBIT and EPS. Okay, here EPS is vanished and that is too bad. Both EPS vanished because we have deleted this data. This is too bad. Okay, we have to put it again. Let's go to 30% debt ratio. We will be quick, and this is your 30% data, and EPS was calculated over here. So we are going to copy them again, but instead of deleting we will write amounts manually. Okay, so here these amounts are returned. Instead of this we will be writing it 0.642, next 4.5, and next 8.35. That's enough. Okay, so we will be now looking for debt ratio of 60%. Yes, this is 60%, and their EPS would be copied from here to downward, and just post them over here. Okay, first amount manually we will write now minus 1.5, 5.1, 11.925. Amounts have been written. Now we can safely remove this data. Okay, come over here. The minimum EPS 0.9, 0.6, and we have minimum EPS 1.5. Okay, and maximum point is 11.92, 6.3. Okay, maximum point we need to put on graph is 11.92. Several small points are also needed. I think 0.5 table would be enough for us. Let's start making the graph. Over here let's choose axis, and we are making y-axis over here. 10 lines would be enough, and over here, okay, let's choose one more in case we need. Here x-axis are maintained, and now we are going to put y-axis. Look, making graph does not need any discussion. It is just demonstration. That is why I'm not loud. First line, that ratio 60 to 40 and 42, 6 fours are 24, 6 7. Okay, 6 table is enough. So we are going to put 60,000 over here. First we are going to align it to the right side. So 60,000. Then we will put 120,000, 180,000, then 240,000, and I think it's enough because maximum amount for EBIT is 420. Oh my god, 420. Oh, 7 lines are needed. All right. Then we have 3 lakh, 3,60,000, 4 lakh, 420,000. 6 sevens are 42. So 4,20,000 we have. Alright, it is completed x-axis. Let's put an additional x-axis line to complete it. So from 60 to 42 it has been completed. Over here what we have mentioned, look, it is our EBIT, earning before interest and tax. On y-axis we will be putting EPS, earning per share. So let's see, earning per share is 0.9. I think 123 would be enough, and we are hopeful that everything could be managed in between this. Let's arrange and align it to the right side, starting from 1, and then we have 2. After 2 we have 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Maximum, I'm hopeful 10. No, 12 we need to put as maximum. So let's come back, 11, and then we need 12, 10. Okay, so our y-axis is also completed, but look, we need a negative point as well. At third stage we need 1.5, which is negative, so we'll have to go down as well. Let's put negative y-axis over here. Line is needed at right side, so here -1 and then -2. Okay, align them to the right side. Finally 1.5 would also be presented. Okay, for all three we have completed our inputs for the graph, and we will be starting pointing out. Let's see if we can get this point. No. Yes, we have got this point, and we will use it for our next calculations. Taking it to further down. First we will present debt ratio, and why not we should make its color blue so that everything would be presented accordingly. Blue line is being chosen for debt ratio 0. Have you got it? For 60,000, 0.9 is needed. This is 60,000 line, and point 0.9 would be present just below 1. So this is your first point. For second point, we need 240,000 and 3.6. 240,000 is present over here. This is first point. And secondly, we need 3.6. And 3.6 would be in between 3 and 4. Okay, we have got our second point. And now let's put our next point. And for next point, let's see what it is. 426.3. First we will go to 420, and why it is not being copied. Oh my god, little extra time is being taken. We need to pick it. Okay, go to 420,000. Let's move our graph little over here. For 420,000, how much was in need? 6.3. This is 420,000, and you need to go to 6.3. Line here is 5. 6.3 would be little up at here. So it has been completed all 3 points. Now it's time to put the line, and let's see if we can copy the line. Yes, it is possible. Get back, and we have this line approaching. Let's take it to the first point, and if it can meet both, yes, it can. So line has been drawn over here, and you can make it to the level of 0 axis as well. Alright, so blue line has been drawn, and this blue line is presenting debt ratio as 0%. For debt ratio 30%, let's choose another color, and we can choose it as red to distinguish it. Debt ratio 30% would be presented with red line. Alright, for that we need this point. If we can copy it, no, no, no. Points are not copying over here. Yes. So first point we have taken. Let's change its color. We need to make it red. Good. Let's get back. For red we have 60,000 and 0.64. 60,000 is present over here, and point, where would be the point? 0.6 we need to put, and 0.6 would be just central point. So why we have chosen different colors? Because we can now differentiate 3 different graphs easily. 0.6. So 0.6 would be little down to blue. Second point is 240,000 and 4.5. So we will go to 240,000, that's here. And what is next point? 4.5. 4.5, this is 5, and 4.5 would be little down. Okay, point has been completed. Now let's get back for 420,000 and 8.35. 420,000 is here and we need to put 8.35. This is your line for 8 and 3.5 would be little up. So all three lines have been completed and we are going to join them. So let's choose it. We have got our second line. Let's change its color. We need to make it red to distinguish it. Alright, line color has been changed and let's align this line accordingly. Red line touching over here. So we have got our point. That's wonderful. Second points. So second graph is also completed and you can see its cut is present over here. Where is it intersecting the second graph? It's time to see third graph where we need, and what color we should choose. I think green would be better. Let's choose it. Hopefully we will get this color from here. So debt ratio 60%, where EBIT is 60,000 and minus 1.5. Okay, so for green color we need to get this small point if it can be chosen. Okay, we have chosen it. Let's change its color as well. We need to make it green and this green would work. So guys, we need 60,000 minus 1.5. This is 60,000 and 1.5 would be downward, and over here let's see 1.5. This would be the point and 1 is over here and 1.5 would be in between 1 and 2. So we have got our first point. Second point would be for 240,000. Let's come over here. For 240,000, second point is 5.1. So take it to 5.1. Go up. This is 5 and 5.1 would be little up. Second point has been mentioned. Let's go for third point, that is first for 20,000 and second point we will see it is 11.925. To go to 11 point we will go up over here. Let me see where is 11 and you need to 11.9, almost 12 we will go for. Okay, choose it and nearby 12 but downward. So we have got the position. Okay, now we need to choose another line and first we will change its color. We need to make it green. Look, presentation is very important. You may be bothering why we are using our time to change the colors. Believe me, it's very important. Good presentation shows that how you love your work. Okay, joining this line and then we have this green point taking this line over here. So we have got our three different graphs. It's better to see where they are intersecting each other. Look over here, the first point, intersection, and then we have another intersection present over here. So you can mark them our three graphs have been completed. Intersection, let's see if it is required in our question. We will see. Anyhow, just put your focus, your attention upon the graph. We have used three different colors. Three lines would be very prominent to you, and you can present this graph easily. Let's go back, and I was just looking at the time, surprised that 1 hour has been passed. It's so amazing that I haven't felt. So when you love your work, when you are passionate with your work, you will never be having any trouble of doing long-term jobs, long-term works. G part we were doing, and we would need to make graph for EBT EPS that has been calculated. Okay, using valuation model in equation 13.12, and you're finding in part A estimated share price. This is point H, estimated share price, point number H. Let's mark over here as this part is also completed, and we are going to start our H point, marking it little light color so that we can mention that this part has been completed. So come over here, and we are now going to start which part? H. Let's put it over here, and we need to calculate share price. So obviously for share price what we need is average EPS, and secondly, to calculate share price we need a required rate of return, required rate of return. Okay, and probability would also be set, probability, or debt equity ratio. These two elements are already present, debt equity ratio and average EPS, and we have just mentioned it over here, debt equity ratio and average EPS. Let's take these values to save our time, and we will use these headings over here. So two values are mentioned, and now we need required rate of return. Okay, need to wrap it up because it is so good, it has been wrapped up. Required rate of return, for that let's get back to the question, and you will see that everything is present in question. Required rate of returns are mentioned over here: 10%, 10.5, 11.6, 14 and 20. Just remember them and see if we can write them: 10, 10.5, 11.6, 14 and 20. So these required rate of returns would be mentioned over here. EPS vanished, and we need to write it again. We will put values over here. Let me put values. Okay, EPS returned. Now we will be writing required rate of return. I'm just reminding you that this required rate of return is present in your book. Remind it: 10, 10.5, 11.6, 14 and 20, and we will try to write it over here if we can remember. First was 10%, and second was 10.5%. Then we have 11.6%, then 14%, after which we were having 20%, and we have to check it again if we can have 10, 10.5 and 11.6. 10, 11, 10.5, 11.6 and 14.20, and I am hopeful that rates are exact 14 and 20. So gradually, thankfully, we have written the same rates. To calculate your share price, we need to put it in decimal format. And how to put decimal format? Simply, you will take this rate, divide it with 100, you will get the amount. Okay, it is already 10%, so 10 divided by 100. We have actually mentioned percentage over here. 10.5 divided by 100. Next, 11.6 divided by 100. Then 14 divided by 100. We have got the price. Then 20 divided by 100. Why we have changed it? Because when we will put share price, then it would be beneficial. To calculate our share price, we need to divide average EPS by required rate of return. So in this way, this formula would be completed. Let's wrap it up so that it can visible easily. Okay guys, formula has been written. Now see how much was your average EPS. That was 3.6, and you need to divide it with required rate of return 10%. We have got share price as 36. Then next EPS was 4.0 and 10.5% was required rate of return. Second price 38.3. Third price we have average EPS 4.5. It is needed to divide with 11.6%. So we have got 38.79. Next is 4.95. We need to divide it with required rate of return of 14%, 35.3, and then finally EPS was 5.175. We need to divide it with required rate of return of 20%. So these share prices have been calculated. Why not to mark it that these were also the answers of H point? We need to put this as main theme. So guys, our H part has already been solved, as well. So please note it down. When you will solve this question by yourself, you will be using these answers as your references, with the help of which you will examine whether your answers are correct or not. So these answers you will use as your reference. Alright, H point is completed. We will now proceed and see what next point is saying. Last, compare and contrast your finding in part F and H. Which structure is preferred? Alright, there are two ways to find out the preferable structure. Over here, first is to examine our EPS. Okay, here you can see from 3.6 to 4.0 to 4.5 to 4.95 and 5.175. Continuously this EPS is increasing, and maximum EPS we have attained at 60%. So this would be chosen for your preferred. If an organization is preferring EPS, it means that 60% debt ratio, 60% debt equity ratio would be most favorable for the firm. IE part we are doing, and by taking reference of EPS we can conclude that organization focusing upon EPS, 60% debt equity ratio would be most preferable. First point we have noted down, and now second point, If you have observed EPS at one stage, and next you will see the share price. Okay, come over here. You can see from 36 to 38 price increased, from 38.3 to 38.7 price increased, but next step you can see that price has been dropped. So it means this 30% would be the stage of preference why we are choosing APS as well. So instead of this we can choose, and secondly we will choose this point. Okay, from this point what we have learned, that organizations focusing upon focusing upon share price, look over here at 30%. So 30% debt equity ratio would be most preferable. Alright, both systems we have discussed that at 30% you can get your maximum share price. After that your price would be decreased. So maximum 30%, but organizations who are happily looking for their EPS, earning per share, they can go further, and 60% debt equity ratio would be preferred by those organizations. So guys, in this way we have completed our last part. So this was perhaps the longest question I have ever solved. And let me write the spellings over here. I have made two spellings organizations. So what I was sharing with you, perhaps this was the longest question I have ever solved on video lectures. And before reviewing this question, I would let you see that how much was the length of this question. Look, this was first part starting from here. Continuously we are going, second part, third part, fourth, fifth, and then we started E part 1, E part 2, and we are not stopping. Continuously when calculations have been present, E third part, EPS, then two graphs were made, and then finally this static. I think these are more than 10 to 15 pages for single question. And even when you will see your examination question, you may have just this part, but over here several parts we have solved just to make our better understanding. Several income statements were made, 6 standard deviations were calculated, 6 averages were calculated, several debt ratios were chosen to make income statements. So in this way everything has been completed. So guys, over here our question has been completed, and it's not ending. I was coming from downward to upward, and now it has been completed to first page. So 13.27 has been ended. Everything is in front of you, and you need to focus upon what was important. And the only thing which I would like to just share with you is these graphs. Focus upon here, and you need to focus upon these graphs very closely. This is how we have calculated the share price by dividing EPS over required rate of return. This required rate of return was given in your question. You have changed into decimal format, and this average EPS was divided by this rate, and you have calculated the share price. Then important thing, how to calculate standard deviation, how to calculate coefficient of variation, how to calculate average EPS, and individual EPSs were calculated. I'm just repeating for you. Please put your attention. Individual EPS, total or average EPS, then you must have complete and comprehensive knowledge about standard deviation. Then you must know how to calculate CV, standard deviation, when it is divided by EPS. Standard deviation divided by arithmetic mean or average, EPS, you will get your CV. How to make graphs, and last share price, that was divided by average EPS was divided by required rate of return, you have got your share price. In this way we have gently reviewed our question as well: standard deviation, arithmetic mean, graphs, individual EPS, collective EPS, CV, and share price and graphs. Though solution is in front of you, everything is done according to requirement of the question, but still if you want to ask any question, any query, any misunderstanding you want to explain, I will 100% available to answer your question instantly. 13.27 has been ended. We will surely be meeting for any solution of next question in next time, but I am informing you this was the last question for 13th chapter. It means Lawrence Gitman Managerial Finance 13th chapter has been ended. So we will be solving any other chapter, any other question, any other exercise in future, and we'll surely meet again for that solution. Up till then, please take care of yourself, and I'm requesting you to please uh, pray for me as well, and a humble request to repeat this question for multiple times to make better understanding. It's time to say goodbye. Thank you very much for your time. See you soon again, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.